It began the same way most catastrophes do in quiet neighborhoods. Not with flames, not with yelling, not with flashing lights or sirens, but with a rumor, a whisper, the kind that drifts through open windows on warm evenings, hitches rides on slow-moving golf carts, sneaks into dog-walking chats, and slips casually into those brief pauses at the mailbox. Did you hear about? And every time it ended the same way. Melissa's planning something. Now, if you've ever lived under an HOA, you already understand exactly what that means. When someone says a name like that, in a lowered voice, eyes flicking around like even the hedges might be eavesdropping, it's never about organizing a bake sale. It's never about repainting the clubhouse walls. It's about control. And Melissa Carter? Yeah, control was her favorite hobby. I'd been living in Cedar Ridge Estates for nearly 12 years by then, long enough to recognize every pothole by heart, every barking dog by sound alone, every neighbor's strange little pastime, and definitely long enough to recognize Melissa's patterns. She didn't simply complain. She organized campaigns. She didn't just dislike something. She launched crusades against it. First, it was my daughter's dirt bike. Claimed the noise was emotionally traumatizing her cats. Then it was Mr. Rollins' wind chimes, which she labeled sonic harassment, her exact words. Then came the Johnson kids' lemonade stand. Apparently, that counted as unlicensed commercial activity. She was always filing complaints, always deeply concerned, always insisting she was just trying to maintain standards. But this time felt different, because Cedar Ridge wasn't some cookie-cutter suburb with matching lawns and inflatable Santas every December. We were semi-rural, zone agricultural residential. That meant people owned animals. Real ones. Chickens, goats, horses, a few head of cattle. I personally had 3 cows, 2 rescue horses, a small flock of sheep, and one extremely aggressive donkey named Leonard who took his security duties far too seriously. This wasn't pretend farming. This was livelihood, therapy programs, supplemental income, generational tradition. So when I heard Melissa was preparing a presentation, my stomach sank. Because when Melissa made PowerPoint slides, people didn't just get annoyed. People got hurt. The HOA meeting was set for a Thursday night. Community hall, folding chairs, burnt coffee, stale cookies, same routine as always. I showed up mostly out of habit. I didn't even think it would involve me. I took a seat in the back, pulled my baseball cap low, crossed my arms, and braced myself for 2 hours of nonsense about landscaping budgets and fence colors. Then the lights dimmed, and there she was. Melissa stood up like she was stepping onto a Broadway stage. Navy blazer, immaculate hair, a binder thick enough to stop a bullet tucked under her arm, a flash drive dangling from her fingers like evidence in a courtroom drama. She smiled, but not a friendly smile. It was a you're about to lose smile. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address a growing threat in our community." Threat. That single word should have been our warning. The projector clicked on, illuminating a wrinkled white bedsheet behind her like some low-budget horror movie screen. Title slide appeared. The Dangers of Livestock in Residential Communities. All caps, red font, dramatic fade in animation. I nearly laughed, until the first image appeared. A cartoon cow with glowing red eyes trampling a rose garden. Next slide. A chicken pecking at a baby's toes like some tiny feathered demon. Third slide. A blurry photo of manure that absolutely came straight from Google Images. She turned back to us and began her sermon. "These animals are unsanitary," she said, pacing slowly across the front. "They spread disease. They attract predators. And let's be honest, the noise alone is unbearable. The mooing, the crowing, the braying at night." She paused. Let the silence stretch. "Our property values," she continued, "are plummeting because of this barnyard infestation." Barnyard infestation. I scanned the room. People shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Mr. Rollins frowned. Mrs. Alvarez clutched her purse like Melissa might start charging admission. Someone coughed, awkward and loud. I stayed quiet, watching carefully, because I knew this wasn't over yet. Then an elderly woman, Miss Harriet, sweet as pie, 80 years old if she was a day, slowly raised her hand. Yes. Melissa said, irritation barely concealed. Well, dear, Miss Harriet said gently, my hens are very quiet, and they give me fresh eggs every morning. I don't really see how. Irrelevant, Melissa snapped, cutting her off mid-sentence without blinking. The CDC has published extensive reports on salmonella outbreaks caused by backyard poultry. Do you want our children exposed to deadly bacteria? Deadly bacteria from eggs? A few parents exchanged uneasy glances. That's when Mr. Coleman stood up. Big man, former mechanic, soft-hearted. Melissa, he said calmly, my grandson's therapy horse helps him walk again. Are you saying I should get rid of him because you don't like hearing hooves on gravel? Silence. For half a second, she hesitated. Then she went for the kill. The Americans with Disabilities Act, she said sharply, does not cover barnyard nuisances. The gasps were real, sharp, audible, like the whole room had been slapped at once. I felt my jaw tighten. That was the moment she crossed the line, the exact moment she stopped being merely annoying and became genuinely dangerous. I pushed my chair back, letting it scrape loudly across the floor on purpose. I stood up slowly. Melissa, I said evenly, I hate to break it to you, but livestock in this community aren't just tolerated. They're protected. She turned toward me, eyes narrowing. I took a breath and continued. Agricultural exemptions are written directly into county code, I said. State law reinforces them. You don't get to override that with an HOA vote. A low murmur rippled through the room. I stepped forward slightly. And if you try, I added, you'll drag this entire board into lawsuits so fast your slideshow won't even have time to reload. She snapped back immediately, jabbing a finger at me. You're biased, she barked. You're the worst offender. Cattle everywhere. Horses, sheep, even guard donkeys. You're the reason I can't enjoy my own backyard. Somewhere in the distance, Leonard probably felt personally attacked. I'm certain of it. Before I could answer, the board president, Carl, cleared his throat. Melissa, he said carefully, choosing every word like it might explode. With all due respect, his livestock are permitted under both state and county law. If we pass something like this, we'll be sued immediately. Her face twisted like she'd just bitten into something sour. Then maybe we should be sued. She shot back. At least then people will finally see what kind of menace we're dealing with. That's when the room broke. Voices piled over one another. People shouted. Someone laughed outright. A guy in the back muttered, loud enough to hear, I'd rather listen to 100 roosters than sit through another one of her speeches. That did it. Laughter spread. The tension cracked. Melissa didn't laugh. She slammed her binder onto the table. Papers scattered everywhere. If the board won't act, she declared, voice shaking with fury, then I will. I'm taking this to the county zoning board. Her eyes burned as she scanned the room. And when they see the truth, she said, you'll all thank me. She stormed out, heels clicking, door slamming. The echo lingered, and as it faded, I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. Now, let me pause the story here for just a moment, because if you've never dealt with HOA politics before, what just happened probably sounded like chaotic nonsense. But trust me, there's a system to this madness. And Melissa was following it perfectly. By standard procedure, most homeowners associations can only regulate what's written into their governing documents. Things like exterior paint colors, fencing styles, parking rules, noise complaints, landscaping standards. They are not mini governments. They do not get to rewrite state law just because someone feels uncomfortable. Legally speaking, agricultural zoning and livestock exemptions sit far above HOA authority. If your county allows animals, an HOA cannot simply vote that permission away. Trying to do so is like attempting to cancel gravity with a committee meeting. But here's where psychology comes in. This was never really about winning that night. Melissa was laying a trap. Notice the word she kept using. Deadly, danger, infestation, threat. That's classic moral panic language. When people become afraid for their health and safety, logic shuts down. Rational thought gives way to emotional voting. And when that doesn't work, people like her escalate. They go higher, They look for bigger stages, county boards, courts, even the media, because in their mind, losing quietly is worse than losing loudly. And that's exactly what she did next. A week later, my phone started buzzing before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee. A message from Carl. Dude, she actually did it. I didn't need to ask who she was. Melissa had filed a petition. County Zoning Board. Formal complaint. Public hearing request. The entire package. And she didn't have to do it. When I finally got my hands on a copy of her submission, I had to sit down. I'm not exaggerating. It was 38 pages long. 38. Printed in full color. Tabs separated. Footnoted. She included photos of manure piles that were clearly ripped straight from Google Images, complete with faint watermarks she forgot to crop out. One image was from a dairy farm in Wisconsin. Another came from some agricultural blog in Australia. She didn't care. Facts were optional. Then came the statistics. According to Melissa's report, livestock were responsible for a significant rise in neighborhood violence. One paragraph claimed cattle were linked to domestic disturbances. Another cited livestock-related homicides. I'm sorry, what? I reread that line 3 times. Livestock-related homicides. Like a cow had broken into someone's house with criminal intent. She also blamed coyotes, raccoons, and even mountain lions on the presence of grazing animals, ignoring the small detail that wildlife existed here long before any of us ever bought property. It was unhinged, but she was deadly serious. The hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. 9 a.m. County Administration Building. 3rd floor. I took the morning off work. So did half the neighborhood. By the time I walked into that chamber, it felt less like a zoning meeting and more like jury duty mixed with a family reunion. Farmers in boots. Retirees in cardigans. Parents clutching folders. Everyone whispering. Everyone waiting. Melissa sat alone in the front row. No entourage. No supporters. Just her binder. Somehow even bigger than before. She looked nervous, but also thrilled, like she finally made it to the big leagues. The commissioners filed in. 3 of them. Ms. Turner, older, sharp-eyed. Mr. Delgado, former city planner. And Judge Harris, retired, now doing civic service because he got bored of fishing. He was my favorite. The clerk called the case. Melissa stood, adjusted her blazer, took a deep breath, and launched in. Honorable Commissioners, she began, I am here today to protect our community from an escalating public health and safety crisis. Same language, different room. She clicked her remote. Slides filled the screen. Same cow, same glowing red eyes, just bigger. She spoke for 20 straight minutes. No pauses, no questions. Disease, crime, property values, children, predators, noise, smell, fear. At one point, she even cried, dabbed her eyes, looked around dramatically. I'm not doing this for myself, she said softly. I'm doing this for all of us. Silence. Then Ms. Turner leaned forward. Ma'am, she said calmly, can you explain the source of these photographs? Melissa froze for half a second. Community submissions, she said quickly. Which community? Mr. Delgado asked. Our residents, she replied. Judge Harris squinted at the screen. Then why does this one say Shutterstock in the corner? Laughter. Not roaring, not cruel, but enough. Melissa's face flushed bright red. Well, the image represents. And these statistics, Ms. Turner cut in smoothly, about livestock-related homicides. Where did you get those? Melissa shuffled her papers. Online research. From where? Judge Harris pressed. She hesitated. Various sources. He leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. Ma'am, he asked evenly, do you believe cows commit violent crime? Dead silence. Then someone snorted. Then another person laughed. Then the entire room broke. Real laughter. The uncontrollable kind that rolls through you before you can stop it. Melissa stood frozen at the podium, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, like the script had just vanished. She tried to recover. I'm saying they create unsafe conditions. Mr. Delgado raised a hand. Let's refer to the zoning code, he said. He flipped open his binder. Section 14.3.2. Agricultural Residential Overlay. Livestock are permitted and protected use. He looked up at her. Your HOA rules do not supersede this. Ms. Turner nodded. Nor does anecdotal fear override established law. Judge Harris smiled faintly. Petition denied. That was it. No theatrics. No debate. No delay. Denied. Melissa collapsed back into her chair like someone had unplugged her completely. Outside the building, neighbors gathered in the parking lot. People hugged, shook hands, laughed. Someone brought donuts. No idea who. Didn't matter. It felt like we'd won something bigger than a zoning dispute. We defended our way of life. Over the next few weeks, the fallout rolled in quietly. People stopped returning her calls. Group chats went silent when she joined. Parents asked their kids to stop repeating the killer cow story at school. The HOA quietly removed her presentation link from the website. No announcement, no apology, just gone. She stopped attending meetings, stopped waving, stopped campaigning. She burned every bridge she had. So I did what any emotionally mature adult would do. I threw a barbecue, a big one, brisket smoked for 12 hours, chicken marinated overnight, goat cheese from Mrs. Alvarez, fresh bread, corn, beans, cold beer. We set up tables under string lights. Music played low. Kids ran around. Dogs begged. Leonard stood tied up, silently judging everyone. We ate. We laughed. We told the story again and again. Every time Judge Harris's line came up, do you believe cows commit violent crime? People lost it all over again. Around sunset, someone nudged me. Hey, look. Melissa drove by slowly, windows down. She smelled it. Hickory smoke, sizzling meat, community. She scowled, didn't stop, didn't wave, just kept driving. And in that moment, it hit me. She hadn't just lost a case. She'd lost her audience, her power, her relevance. And honestly, that was a real verdict. So what's the lesson here? On the surface, sure, it's a funny story. Killer cows, PowerPoint meltdowns, a zoning board turning into a stand-up comedy club for 10 minutes. But underneath the laughs, there's something real, something that shows up in neighborhoods everywhere. Conflict in communities is almost never about what it pretends to be about. It's rarely about chickens or fences or noise or parking spots. It's about control, identity, someone feeling powerless in their own life and trying to claw back significance by managing everyone else. Melissa didn't hate livestock. She hated not being the center. She hated that Cedar Ridge wasn't shaped around her comfort. She hated that people were living happily without her permission. So she reframed discomfort as danger, as concern, as public safety. That's how moral crusades are born. And legally, this is why knowing your rights matters more than people realize. If I hadn't known about agricultural exemptions, if Carl hadn't understood liability, if Mr. Delgado hadn't opened that binder, she might have won. Not because she was right, but because she was loud. People like that thrive on exhaustion. They count on neighbors being busy, intimidated, willing to say, fine, whatever, just to avoid confrontation. That's how unreasonable rules sneak in. One vote at a time, one scared neighbor at a time, one temporary policy that somehow lasts forever. It's a psychological trap. 2, when someone frames something as safety, your brain shuts off nuance. You stop asking, is this true? And start asking, what if it is? Fear is a shortcut, and manipulators love shortcuts. But here's the hopeful part. Communities work when people show up, not just physically, emotionally, when Miss Harriet raised her hand, when Mr. Coleman spoke up, when half the neighborhood took a day off work. That mattered. Silence would have been easier. Silence would have cost us everything. Melissa paid a price, socially, reputationally, emotionally, not because we attacked her, not because we shamed her, but because she exposed herself. People saw the gap between I'm protecting you and I want power. And once you see that gap, you can't unsee it. So if you're watching this and thinking, my HOA has Melissa, you're probably right. Every community does. Maybe they're quieter. Maybe they're sneakier. Maybe they smile more in public. But they're there. And the antidote is always the same. Know the rules. Know your rights. Talk to your neighbors. Document everything. And don't let fear make decisions for you. Because the moment you outsource your voice, someone else will happily use it. For themselves, not for you. And finally, remember this. Winning isn't always about getting your way. Sometimes it's about protecting space for everyone else to live theirs. Cedar Ridge didn't win because we kept cows. We won because we stayed human, because we laughed, because we cooked together, because we refused to let paranoia rewrite our reality. So now I'm curious. Have you ever dealt with someone like this in your neighborhood? A self-appointed ruler, a rule book warrior, a PowerPoint tyrant? Drop your story in the comments. I read them all. And who knows, maybe your killer cow moment will be next.